So this is a very broad, which is fine. It's keen to understand career progressions available, certainly within PMO space, which is obviously what we're all about. Eileen, do you want to kick off here?
Well, I think it's we always tell the story. So Lindsay and I are old hags at this, and we kind of when we
Did you
came
say
in,
old eggs at
I
this?
did. But when we came into PMO, a lot of people came into the PMO. So when I grew up, I could become a project manager. I think those days have very much changed, and I think there's an opportunity to progress right up to a kind of PMO director level within the PMO. So typically, kind of if you kind of come in at a very junior level, it tends to be a PMO administrator, kind of straight in. I don't know anything about kind of project management, and then moving into that kind of analyst role. And the PMO analyst role is so broad, so you can be kind of very general and kind of know a bit of everything to support project program managers or even a kind of a portfolio office. But actually, at that analyst level, as we just mentioned, the ability to specialize in risk management or planning are the two kind of the key ones. But also, we're seeing lots more in the kind of the data analysis element, and also in the kind of what we would call the kind of the controls element, those things where we actually understand all of the various elements that would give indicators on how the projects and programs are doing. But I think what we also forget in that PMO analyst role is the ability to actually run small projects to introduce new services into the organization and actually say, currently, we just expect the project managers to do a plan on anything. And it would be part of that PMO manager's role, working with the PMO manager to implement a new planning system and use some new planning standards. So you've got that kind of opportunity, not just to kind of do a specialism, but actually to kind of work with a much wider range of people. The PMO manager's role, I think, is a really interesting one, and I know there's perhaps a question kind of coming up in that. But moving up to a PMO manager's role is very much, and I think a lot of PMO managers actually spend a lot of time doing real work, doing essentially work of a PMO analyst, but looking in charge of. And what we're trying to do here is really recognise that actually part of the PMO manager's role is to make sure we're doing the right things for the project and program managers. And so there is very much an element of understanding what the needs and requirements are and being able to understand how the PMO can help. So very much a kind of a different focus from doing to actually overseeing requirements and delivering against those.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I would add in here is that what is interesting about a career in PMO is just how many different opportunities can spring up, which might not be what you're expecting. And that's certainly the case, with a lot of people I've met along the way, myself included, that sometimes it's because of the kind of work that you're doing, you can become known for something, and people tend to seek you out on that thing, and it might not necessarily be what might be in your master plan. Or we had when we went to the PMO conference, that was interesting. She was talking about North Stars, in terms of like you're thinking about your career, and everybody,
Right.
You might have a North Star that tries to, that it's guiding you, and that you think you want to be going into a certain place. And I think sometimes you need to be a bit more open to what some of these opportunities might be. And then sometimes it's a bit weird because I'm not quite sure, but it's fine. I think there's a lot of people I've met along the way where their PMO career journey has just been kind of like,
Yes.
a bit of a wobbly path.
And I had somebody who worked for me. We were implementing a system, and he became a tool specialist. Now he never ever he came in as a an experienced project manager and not the PMO. Did some work in the PMO, and as I say, we introduced this tool, and he became the global tool specialist.
Yeah.
And he said when we started, I don't think I can do this, Eileen, but actually he really kind of found his stride and actually then became the person who was advising the lead with the IT function in terms of what we could do with that system and how to use it, and then worked with everybody from new project managers coming in to senior executives providing them access to the data. I myself kind of spent a lot of time doing project costing. Again, never even kind of thought that would have been my area, because PMO learn, I'm really into kind of the development and the kind of the learning around that. But actually the project costing area I found really interesting in terms of forecasting, you know, kind of what resources are going to work on all of the kind of the portfolio, but you can't do that without actually understanding how much that's going to cost and whether they're going to be consultants, contractors, or employed people. So it's amazing how kind of the things kind of interlink.
Yeah, I mean, in the counselling, career development world, they have different names for different types of careers, and this is a classic, we call a kaleidoscope career,
Okay.
where you have like a, you know, of the old childhood toy where you think you're in one thing, but it could be a slight twist, a little turn here or there, and the picture changes. There's a lot of other ones, because I think we know now that since COVID, that a lot of people have been able to work in for different types of organizations that they thought would never be able to because they weren't in that location, you know, so the ability to work from anywhere. There's also that kind of lifestyle change that people have had, which is the kind of nomadic working, which is you can be literally on the other side of the world and still working, you know, for somebody here in the UK, but you could be based somewhere else. You know, there's the whole classic of being a contractor. Okay, here in the UK, it got, I won't say decimated, but it big change with the whole IR35 things. But that has meant that for some people that were out and out contractors, great, you kind of set out your stall and that's what you're doing. For other people, again, changing, do I go down the consultancy route? You know, do I actually step away from PMO completely? Because we did a session which I can't remember what the title of it was, but it'll be on the blog. I'm sure Jen might be able to find it. Jen's our training administration girl. We did a session where you can see just how many different routes that don't have to be project, and it doesn't have to be projects in any sense of the word, because actually working in PMO just give you a really great grounding to running your own business.
Absolutely. So
You know, another small,
more people in.
yeah, small business it might be, or you know, that you're going to do something completely different. And met a lot of people along the way that have just said, you know, I've got some great business skills here from working around projects, and now I'm going to go and set up my own cafe, you know, my own jewelry business.
That's really interesting, because when you're working with a PMO, you're almost kind of working one step removed from the project or program, so you see that bigger picture than perhaps when you're kind of focused on an individual project. And you know, we know quite a few people who've kind of got to that kind of PMO analyst and then contracting, and you actually get to see many different PMOs, and I think that's a really interesting way to kind of spend your career. I know when I moved from my first PMO job to another PMO job, I thought that's okay. I know PMO, sorted it. And then I went into the new PMO and it was all completely different. As you know, as we now know, it absolutely should be, because it should be tailored to the organization. So I think it's really interesting, is kind of as you go, you can kind of, you know, that kaleidoscope career, you can end up kind of doing one element, you can kind of do benefits in one PMO, actually go to another PMO, and actually what you're then really involved with is, you know, kind of the forecasting, and you get into data analysis. So, you know, can gradually kind of build up all of your different skills on the in a PMO world.
And also, it's perfectly fine to be the best kick-ass PMO analyst in the world and not want to go and move on and upwards, or
absolutely,
you know, go and do anything else as well. I think that's, you know, people, when you've found something that you know that you really enjoy and want to get out of bed in the morning to do, you shouldn't feel pressured that actually you have to take on more. Because I think that's another thing that happened to me quite early on in my career. It's like, oh, you're really good at that. Well, why don't you try managing people as well? It's like, it's just fine. Just let me just do this.
Absolutely.
You know, before you throw something else into a mix. It doesn't work for everyone. But yeah, I think that's what we also need to remember sometimes, is that progression doesn't mean having to climb a ladder.
Absolutely not.
Progression could be absolutely just here in your head.
Absolutely.